Stop romancing Islam. Stop romancing this whole concept of peace.
The video you've just seen is actually by a Shia cleric from Melbourne called Sayyid Abdullah Al-Musawi.
Ooh, sinister. Wait a sec, Demetriadi? That doesn't sound very Australian. Who is this guy? Alexi Demetriadi, covering focus on social cohesion, anti-Semitism. Okay, carry on.
He's based out of a podcast studio, publishing episodes and publishing videos on his podcast called Kalashnikovia.
Kalashnikovia. I literally introduce it at the beginning of every show.
And the logo for the podcast has an AK-47 rifle.
Ooh, investigative journalism at its peak. How did you find that? I mean, we made it so obscure. I mean, it's not literally like we spelled it out in the title. These morons think they can say whatever they like and get away with it because multi-million-dollar international media organizations have their back. Organizations like Sky News. So let's have a look and see what ridiculous claims they've made this time.
Concerns are growing here at home after reports an Australian man has relocated to Iran and is now hosting a strongly anti-Western podcast.
So they claim that Sayyid Abdullah has spread propaganda.
Anti-Western propaganda.
Sky News doesn't tell you, so allow me to repeat some of the sentiments that we express in the podcast. The Western governments are riddled with pedophilic Epstein clients. Western governments favour Israeli interests over their own people. As per all independent research, 9/11 was an inside job. Iraq never had weapons of mass destruction. America and the West are waging futile wars against oppressed people of the world. It is the duty of every human being, especially Muslims, to rise against tyranny and oppression, etc. You know, it's funny. That which the mainstream media brands as anti-Western propaganda is just, the truth.
Anti-Western propaganda, hateful anti-West rhetoric.
The propaganda is working.
Propaganda.
And they riddle their Islamophobic rhetoric with insults, saying that Sayyid Abdullah fled from Australia. He didn't flee. Their usage of this word is only there to insinuate that he was some sort of criminal, as though he had a brush with the law. But as far as I know, and as far as the record states, Sayyid Abdullah has always been a law-abiding citizen like the vast majority of Muslims. They only use words like flee and fled to paint a cowardly disposition of a man who in reality was bold enough to pursue his dream of traveling. Having said that, in the West, a person can lose their job for supporting the oppressed, can face prison for sharing a meme, and can be killed for speaking the truth. Back in the day, you'd hear of people fleeing to the West to find freedom of expression. Well, nowadays, people have to flee from the West to freely express themselves. And that is only a reflection of a dangerous flaw in the ideological backbone of Western society, which boasts freedom of speech with one hand and silences and censors the truth with the other. And if a person speaks up against the oppression, if a person is brave enough, as Sayyid Abdullah was brave enough to say, I can't breathe, instead of addressing the core underlying issue of suffocation of freedom of speech in the West, what do the puppet mouthpieces of the system do? They call you a threat to national security.
And I listened to that and I thought, at what point does a rhetoric like that become a national security issue for us?
The propaganda is working.
Propaganda.
Is this not a dictatorship, a totalitarian statehood, a total undermining of the very liberty the West claims to uphold?
So he's not hiding behind anything. He is posing a threat to not just Australians, but everyone.
They make these huge claims, yet they don't even provide one clip, not even one ripped out of context, in order to back up their claims. And they stretch these lies so far that they call for the revoking of a man's citizenship. Why?
Why is he even able to maintain his citizenship? This is a person who is very vocal about his disdain of the West.
There you have it, folks. Disdain for the authoritarian powers that be is now enough to revoke citizenship. Anyone who complains or has disdain for the government, according to Sky News, is a potential fugitive. How long before they start carrying citizens off to concentration camps for questioning the government.
He is encouraging others to take up arms and fight the West.
In the podcast, we might have called for fighting against the oppressors and tyrants, and we stand by that. But what we didn't call for is the mass killing of common people in the West, like these people are trying to make it seem. Sayyid Abdullah is by no means a threat to common people. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He is a passionate teacher, an extremely kind and gentle friend. Let me tell you something, every time he comes to my house, he comes like Santa Claus bearing gifts. My kids love him. He is so compassionate with children and with youths. There's a reason why people queue up to attend his classes. In his home, he washes the dishes, he vacuums, he does the chores. My point is, he is a wonderful person, and you only have to ask his many friends and his loving family to find that out. The false claims and the targeting of this good man is, as Trump incidentally puts it, fake news. And Sky News and these miscreants should know that what they are doing is illegal. They can be sued for this egregious defamation for which they have provided zero evidence. So don't be surprised if you have to lawyer up. Their accusations are entirely indefensible, and they have directly threatened a person's human rights, citizenship, security and well-being. And if they claim that they've done all this in the name of journalism, then that's not journalism, that's libel. A published false statement that is damaging to a person's reputation. This is zero journalistic integrity, because had they investigated even a little bit, they would have found the claims to be untrue. And they try and show that the Sayyid is the one making the egregious statements.
He said some really egregious things about Western culture.
Really? Which egregious things? Can you believe that these leftist stooges of the state actually claim that Sayyid Abdullah called all the women in the West pigs?
That is oppression. So for him to say that all of us in the West are pigs, we are scum, that we are horrible people who support oppression abroad.
You know, this is why people don't trust the mainstream media anymore. I mean, just think about that for a moment. Either what they're saying is true, in which case the evidence should be there. I mean, the podcasts are available for everybody to view. Or they're just straight up lying. The latter is more likely true because she claims to have watched the entire series.
You know, this man, he talks about oppression so much in his podcast. I unfortunately had to sit down and listen to all of them.
Personally, I find it hard to believe that she's ever sat down and listened to anyone attentively other than her own echo chamber. Oh, you who believe if a wicked person comes to you with a report, verify it lest you harm people in ignorance. And then in the morning you become regretful for what you did. The mainstream Western establishments are full of wicked, evil, dishonest people. Don't take my word for it, take Trump's, who said he's going to drain the swamp. That's why people voted for him, and then he turned out to be the worst of them. But the point is, when these people come to you with a report, don't trust it, investigate.
One of the things that stood out for me was that he described conflict as an eternal battle of faith.
Let me try and break that down. So apparently Sayyid Abdullah described conflict as an eternal battle of faith. So conflict as an obscure concept is an eternal battle of faith. I don't get it. I'm sorry. Sky News, can you explain this for me? No, you can't. Because they're just quoting out of context and throwing words around as if they wanted to bring conflict and faith into one sentence. In their desperation to paint Sayyid Abdullah as a threat, they just slip in a mention of ISIS. ISIS.
He is still an Australian citizen, and we have seen that, ISIS brides have returned recently.
Sky News, can you also mention how Sayyid Abdullah is actually part of the Shia Muslim community, which just happens to be the primary targets of ISIS? Can you also explain how Iran under Shahid Qasim Soleimani and the Islamic resistance were actually the ones to defeat ISIS? Can you also add the minor detail that America and the West created and funded ISIS? Can you perhaps mention how Sayyid Abdullah's religious and political alignment is therefore diametrically opposed to ISIS? No, of course you can't, because those minor details don't fit your monotonous, tone-deaf 2D narrative that paints any Muslim you don't like as a violent extremist terrorist. No, the picture you want to paint is that you're either with the pro-Zionist Western governments or you're a terrorist, just like ISIS. This is the one-eyed, tunnel-visioned approach of the New World Order. In the words of George Bush, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. We're not the ones who insult women, you are, because from your warped, two-dimensional representation, Iranian women are either oppressed women in black or liberated women because they can wear miniskirts. Yeah, baby! My point is, in their stereotypical representation, there's no in-between.
Oppression is in Iran, where women have no control over their identity.
False. Unlike this woman, Sayyid Abdullah and I have been living in Iran for the past decade, and let me tell you, this statement of hers is false. I have never seen a woman more empowered than Iranian women. They are free, bold, highly proud, to a fault in fact. They drive like maniacs, they participate in international sports, and above all else, they are highly educated.
They have no rights legally.
False. To anyone who's been living in Iran or has done any kind of independent research, this statement of hers is frustratingly untrue. The legal system in Iran favors women to such an extent that I feel sorry for Iranian men.
Oppression is in Iran because people cannot choose their faith.
False. The other day, me and my wife, we drove past a church. We must have imagined it.
For a woman to lose her life just for showing this much hair.
That must be so heartbreaking for you when people reach out asking for you to help them get them out of Iran.
The propaganda is working.
Propaganda.
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 The mainstream media claims that we're the ones spreading propaganda. I don't think so. They are the ones who are spreading anti-Iranian propaganda. She claims
Oppression is in Iran because people cannot choose their faith. They cannot choose what political ideology they would like to follow.
Wait, hold on a second. Are you saying you believe that people should be allowed to choose their own political ideology? Is that really what you believe? Then why do you have a problem with Sayyid Abdullah? Because he chose a political ideology that's opposed to yours? Forget about women's rights. Apparently you don't even believe in men's rights to choose their own political ideology.
It's nothing but hypocrisy, hypocrisy, hypocrisy.
They don't give a damn about women's rights. It's a front for Zio-American invasion of Iran. If they did care, why was Zio-America's first move in the Ramadan war to bomb an Iranian girls' school full of children?
And human rights advocate Tina Kordrastami, human rights.
She's a peace-loving human rights activist, right? I mean, surely she supports the negotiations. She doesn't want war, right? Let's see how peace-loving this person really is. Iranian human rights activist Tina Kordrastani says any negotiation with the current Iranian regime is never hopeful.
Human rights advocate Tina Kordrastami.
It's nothing but hypocrisy, hypocrisy, hypocrisy.
She proudly supports the Women Life Freedom movement, which is supported by America and the West in a bid to enforce regime change in Iran and replace the popular Islamic Republic with a literal king, the Shah. It's a movement which has the backing of world governments and has led to the mindless killing of thousands in Iran, while the mainstream media presented the terrorism of this group and others like it as peaceful protesters.
The propaganda is working.
These extremist leftists who the mainstream media keeps inviting onto their talk shows are open advocates for the bombing of people, even in their own country of origin. They say Sayyid Abdullah fled in a condescending and belittling tone, even though he didn't flee.
This cleric who lived in Melbourne has fled over to Iran.
This woman, on the other hand, literally ran away from her own country.
I think that's the most alarming factor for us in the Iranian diaspora. So those of us who had to run away from that country.
This woman fled her own country into the arms of an oppressive Zionist government and turned her guns against her own homeland, cheering for Israel and America as they bomb Iranian people and looking with disdain at negotiations.
What are your initial thoughts when you hear something like that?
Hypocrisy. The reality of Iran is that it speaks nothing but the language of oppression.
We're the ones who make egregious statements? I beg to differ. It's the mainstream media and its spokespeople who spread the most egregious and catastrophic lies. They lied about 9/11, they lied about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, they lied about Epstein, they lied about this, they lied about this, and this, they are lying about Iran. Why do you mix the truth with falsehood and hide the truth while you know? They know the reality, yet they mix it up in order to deceive others. So when she says,
he talks time and time again in these podcasts about how Shaitan or the devil is controlling the West and how every Muslim is responsible for fighting against this devil.
Yes, this is true. Shaitan, the devil, has gained dominion over the West. Who can deny? They have hijacked almost every significant seat of authority and influence in the Western world and rendered the Western nations as vassal states of Zio-America. And yes, it is the responsibility of not just every Muslim, but every freedom-seeking group and individual to fight against these devils by any means necessary. This is the truth of what we believe. They take the truth and mix it with the false allegation that we are calling for violence against common people, when in reality, we are calling on the common people to accept Islam and defend the oppressed because we value human life and dignity, unlike these sellouts.
Human rights, human rights, human rights.
Why is it that in Australia, millions of people are below the poverty line, hundreds of thousands of children are impoverished, while the Australian government continues to support Israel? They try and make this into an Australian versus non-Australian, Iranian versus non-Iranian thing.
An Australian man, an Australian citizen.
We are being lectured to by every non-Iranian out there.
They make this into Muslim versus non-Muslim, Shia versus Sunni. It's the classic strategy of the tyrant. Pharaoh exalted himself in the land and made its people into factions, oppressing a group among them. You think this attack against Sayyid Abdullah is something new? Sheikh Farouk Sikalishver was forced to leave Australia before the government revoked his visa. Sheikh Mansour Leghai deemed a security risk and denied permanent residency. Now they've come to attack an actual citizen of Australia. This is a clear pattern of Islamophobia and Iranophobia. We know for a fact that none of these advocated for violence against common people, and yet whenever they're attacked by the Zionist media, nobody helps or supports them because it's easier to disassociate and abandon them. Hey, it's not my group or my faction that's being attacked. It's just those crazy revolutionary Shias. Allah says, "What is wrong with you? Why do you not help each other?" Everyone from Alex Jones to Joe Rogan, from David Icke to George Galloway, etc., they're allowed to criticize, expose, and oh yes, have disdain for Western governments. But when a Muslim speaks, especially one associated to the Islamic Republic, that's when alarm bells start going off. If the Western governments were fair, they would let the people hear the message of pure Muhammadan Islam. And if the people heard the truth of Islam, not the Western Islamophobic propaganda, but the truth, they would fall in love with Islam. And if they fell in love with Islam, they would no longer tolerate themselves or others being oppressed any longer. In this sense, Islam is the most liberating ideology on the face of the planet. That's why they don't want you to hear it. The mainstream media's constant attacks on Islamic scholarly personalities is not just an attack on them or on Iran. It's an attack on you because they don't want you to hear the other side of the story. It is your freedom that is being attacked. Yesterday they silenced Muslim scholars, today they silence you. In the words of Nelson Mandela, we know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. In their defamation of Sayyid Abdullah, they point out that
he said some really egregious things about Western culture, but also mainstream Muslim bodies and Muslim leaders in the West, in Australia.
Yes, because the majority of so-called Muslim scholars living comfortably in the West are not preaching the truth of Islam. If they were, they would have been imprisoned like Nelson Mandela. They would have been exiled like Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. They would have been slain like Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. The flowery and pacifist image that they have presented of Islam is not Islam at all. This is the context in which Sayyid Abdullah said,
And I want to leave one more word for the speakers and preachers out there, or especially the one in the West. Stop romancing Islam. Stop romancing this whole concept of peace.
the era of romancing and romanticizing Islam is over. Muslim scholars should stop attempting to present Islam as a religion of peace. Islam is not a religion of peace or of war. It is a religion of justice. No justice, no peace. Hands off the Middle East. Sayyid Abdullah and I are not going to soften our rhetoric to appease these Zionist fools. Now some might say to us, no, but why don't you just Tone it down a bit. Why do you have a Kalashnikov? Why do you speak so harshly? So did Sheikh Farooq Sikalishwar and Sheikh Mansoor Lighai have a Kalashnikov logo or speak harshly? No, right? But they were still targeted, weren't they? How about we rebrand the show as Flower Power? We'll only talk about akhlaq and spirituality. Heck, we can even change the theme to the colors of the rainbow. What do you think of that, Sayyid?
That will still cause terrorists, bro.
Exactly. Let me tell you the kind of Muslim scholar that the Zionists love. It's the type of scholar that doesn't stand for anything and just goes around saying, brother, this is haram. Brother, this is halal. Sister, your hijab, sister. Brother, your akhlaq, brother. Brother, let me perform your nikah ceremony, and then when you die, I'll perform your funeral prayers, and then I'll bury you in the dirt. And then we can meet up in Jannah, brother. Is that what you think your deen is? You think that's the religion of God to you? If this is Islam, in your opinion, then good luck to you. I personally love the Sunni scholar Dr. Zakir Naik, and I know Shi'as might have a problem with him if he said Yazid radiallahu anhu, or if he said the word Shi'a doesn't exist in the Holy Quran. These are false statements. Hey, everybody makes mistakes, but what you have to look at is when it comes to the core ethos of Tawheed and resistance, where does he stand? When he's put in the corner and questioned directly about Osama bin Laden, perhaps the most extreme example and the epitome of terrorism as per the Western narrative, how does he answer?
If he's on the truth, if he's fighting the enemies of Islam, I'm for it. I don't know what he's doing. I'm not in touch with him. I don't know him personally. I read newspapers. If he's terrorizing the terrorists, if he's terrorizing America, the terrorist, biggest terrorist, I'm with him. Every Muslim should be a terrorist. The thing is that if he's terrorizing a terrorist, he's following Islam. Whether he is or not, I don't know. So don't go and tell outside that Zakir Naik is for Osama bin Laden.
The point is that Dr. Zakir Naik has nothing to do with Afghanistan or the Taliban. He could have easily thrown it all under the bus with a sweeping condemnation and be done with it. Instead, he chose not to appease the Zio-Americans. Today, Muslims can't even support Hezbollah. If a pompous idiot like Piers Morgan backs us into a corner and says, "Do you condemn Hamas?" we feel pressurized. Any so-called Muslim scholar who is living in the West while not speaking out against the atrocities of the Western systems, it doesn't matter how much akhlaq or knowledge they might appear to have, David Icke is better than them. At least he was harassed by the mainstream media and called crazy, so they rejected our servant and called him mad, and he was driven away. Who is closer to Allah? The one who only preaches the Quran, or the one who actually walks the path of the Quran? Rachel Corrie, Shahida, is better than them. An American woman who left her home to defend the oppressed of Palestine and reached martyrdom. She is much better than these pacifist scholars who for some reason might assume that they are more entitled to Jannah, paradise, than her. Do you think that you will enter the garden while Allah has not yet known those who strive hard among you, and He has not known the patient? The common irreligious socialist who strives, who is patient, who rallies people for the defense of Palestine is better than any pacifist scholar, regardless of how big their turban or their beard might be, and regardless of how much they might present themselves as the best Shia or the best Sunni. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "One who rises in the morning and is not concerned with the affairs of the Muslims is not a Muslim." So forget your Sunniism, forget your Shiaism. According to your very own Prophet, you're not even Muslim. While there's others whose hearts burn for what is happening to the Muslims. Start judging the integrity of our scholars based on their revolutionary stances. Because when the savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, comes, it's what you stand for that will count. In the words of perhaps the single greatest Muslim scholar in the entire Western world to date, a man who never appeased the oppressors, a man for whom none other than Sayyid Imam Ali Khamenei recited Surah Fatiha for, Shaheed Malcolm X. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything.